The dust has officially settled on the NHL trade deadline 2023, and it's time to buckle up for the stretch run of the fantasy hockey season. We got big time bets, we got waiver wire Monday, and we got a little fantasy hockey recap from the weekend all on tap for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back from the weekend and happy Monday. It is the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, back for another major week of fantasy news and breakdowns. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. It's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone, back in the booth, back in the fantasy hockey lab, trying to bring you all of this Monday fire on today's episode. You know I got the waiver wire bet. You know I got the bets going. I'm here also for a big weekend recap. The dust settles on the Friday 3 p.m. trade deadline, and there was some major action over the weekend. And when I'm sitting here getting ready for today's episode, I took a look at a number of teams across the NHL. Some are already excelling with new additions in the fold. We'll talk about that. Some are looking a bit concerning if you're fans of certain teams who have additions in. Toronto Maple Leafs are one of those teams that I'm a little bit concerned about. I'll talk about that in a big way, breaking down, of course, the waiver wire targets that your team needs, big time bets at the end of the show. But I really do just want to kick off today's episode. Again, people, ride in solo. Hope you're feeling the solo content. I miss my co-host, Steele. The man was deep in Las Vegas territory, taking in John Bones Jones, submitting his opponent for another big victory on his career and path back to a historic one in the UFC. This isn't a UFC breakdown, but I'm trying to say Steele will be back with me in an episode or two, but you got me again for today, people, and there is a lot to talk about. And I say this week after week, but as we draw near to the fantasy hockey postseason, it's time to really buckle up and tap in, because right now it can mean the difference between you getting that money and you missing out and not getting the bragging rights. And so I just wanted to do a little weekend roundup, some of the top news that I was seeing and some of the top things that I'm seeing. And right off the top, the Boston Bruins just continue to flex their muscle. They bring in Dmitry Orlov, Garnet Hathaway, and then lastly, why am I drawing a blank on the last one? Tyler Bertuzzi. Thank you very much, Steele. Not here to help me out. The win streak hits 10 games. The rest of the Eastern Conference that have made their moves around them and the Boston Bruins now adding what they did, you just got to give hats off credit due to a team that is seriously continuing to steamroll and impress. If you haven't already gone out there and considered a shot at Dmitry Orlov, that would be one. Tyler Bertuzzi already chipping in with production offensively over the weekend and just seeing how good they are. Grab Charlie Coyle is producing. Grab yourself any piece of the Boston Bruins. That's what I wanted to come on here and say. And while they are rolling, that Atlantic Division has to pay attention. And the Toronto Maple Leafs roll into the Vancouver Canucks barn on the road, and they lay an absolute egg. And they also give up 2 goals on the same penalty kill. That's the first time the Canucks have done that since 1992. Austin Matthews takes a shot in an awkward area. John Tavares gets popped a couple times. And perhaps most concerningly, and why he will be reevaluated at some point today, Ryan O'Reilly takes a slap shot off the hand from Austin Matthews. When you look at what's going on around them, and I will talk about the Ottawa Senators in a second, in this Atlantic Division, the Boston Bruins flexing their muscle, Ottawa Senators rounding into form, the Tampa Bay Lightning having their struggles as well, but right there, only 5 points currently adrift of the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs need to wake up. And what they've done to bring in the pieces that they have, it's exciting. And yes, on paper, it makes them a better team. Chemistry is not something that you can forge. It has to be built. And this team is going to have to figure it out in a hurry, because the pressure is on from those teams around them. The Metro loaded up as well. So if they want to actually separate themselves this year for the first time in a long time as real contenders, just seeing the way that they performed versus the Canucks in the final clutch minutes of that game. I know it was 1-1 and a close 1-goal game for the most of it. the Leafs need to wake up. And now, if some of these pieces are hurt fantasy-wise, Ryan O'Reilly, Austin Matthews looked a bit banged up. These are the moments that you have to pay attention to and capitalize or move on from, because they will really burn you. And speaking of getting burned, moving on to the Edmonton Oilers, some of these things, people, that I saw from the weekend, that's what I'm talking about here in this first segment, breaking down a very busy weekend in the NHL and some of these fantasy impacts for this upcoming week. I'm going to get to the waiver wire targets. I got 2 goalies, I got 2 D-men, and I got 2 forwards that you're going to want to pay attention to. We got a Monday 6-game betting board. I'm going to get there in a second as well. The Oilers, though, they do their best Jekyll and Hyde performance Friday and Saturday. Friday, looking very good against the same Winnipeg Jets team that they absolutely get blown out by in certain periods in that Saturday game. 6-3 win for the Oilers on Friday, but a 7-5 loss. And you can't help but feel that Jack Campbell, my goodness, he cannot get a safe setting team. Jack Campbell, I know, 17-9-4. That's a facade. Maybe that's really him letting the team 3.57 goals against average and an 8.82. What I've seen from Jack Campbell's points that I've watched him this season, and I'll be honest, haven't watched every single game, and I know he's come up there with some of those 10 bell saves that he tends to have. He has looked lost. He's doing the Peter Mrazek backstroke in there when I've been watching the games that Jack Campbell has had, and he's really struggling to see the puck. That, when you see a goalie struggling to see the puck, a lot of that comes from confidence, and we know Jack Campbell has been a solid goalie over the last couple of seasons, a really good number 2 option, in my opinion, and a career backup who should stay in that lane, in my opinion, but he's getting paid like a number 1. Jack Campbell's problems has been between the ears. It's been mentally tough to see him go through his lack of mental toughness, and he's been letting this team down. They allow 7 goals to the Jets and look kind of rough at times in the process. If not for a Leon Draisaitl hat trick, that's a really, really ugly finish, and one that the Oilers just, this division, as much as I keep saying the Western Conference is wide open, with them having Colorado, Calgary, Nashville still behind them, it's not a shoo-in that they get that wild card. I do think that they creep into that 3rd spot in the Pacific, but they need to play a lot better. And right now, what they're putting out there on the ice is just not good enough. I will talk about a player, though, that I mentioned last week and having a big-time opportunity. 3 assists for Evan Bouchard on Saturday night. I said, take a look at the absence of Tyson Barrie and what Evan Bouchard might have an opportunity to accomplish with that top power play unit. And I think he's worth a waiver wire. I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to the big time bets. I am also going to get to the rest of what I have seen from the weekend. That includes the Penguins in trouble, Senators rounding into form, and the Minnesota Wild, other than the Boston Bruins, hottest team in the league. Going to talk about all of that because it is another jam-packed week of fantasy hockey news. But I got to talk about our friends from Athletic Greens next, and AG1. Today's episode is brought to you by AG1 and Athletic Greens. It's a product that Steele and I love to use every single day. It helps support your immune system. It helps you keep your energy levels up and stay focused at work. What is this stuff? All you need is 1 scoop in water every single day. No need for a million different supplements to support your health. It's lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, no artificial anything, and it still tastes good. It helps you sleep better as well. I don't know what else you need to hear, but how about this? Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews, and it's recommended by pro athletes and trusted by leading health experts such as Tim Ferriss and Michael Gervais. Make sure you are considering AG1 from Athletic Greens because it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. 1 scoop in water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills or supplements. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you 1 free year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Podcast, Hockey Podcast, your first listen every single day. I really appreciate it. Steele really appreciates it. If you're listening out there and that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you're on the audio side, make sure you drop us a review. Hit us what you're feeling. The feedback is key from you guys. We holler at you a lot about it, but we appreciate it and we mean it. So thank you for tuning in and for making us your source for fantasy hockey news. Got a lot more to get to, and I'm going to try and break it all down in short form so you can get back to your busy day, people. That's all what we're about here at this podcast. But seriously, I said Bruins, I said Leafs, I said Oilers. I want to talk about some of these teams in the Eastern Conference on the wild card bubble. And the Penguins get pumped by the Panthers 4-1 on Saturday, convincing fashion. The New York Islanders play very well, a convincing win for them at home as well on Saturday. And when I see teams like the Senators, who I'm going to talk about in a second, and I see teams behind the Florida Panthers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, I'm a little bit concerned if I'm the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I know they bring in Granlund. They make some of these more peripheral veteran moves. I know they brought in another guy or two. The names are escaping me. That's why I need Steele. But I'm worried about this team. And I'm worried that Tristan Jarry's health has been up and down this season. I know he's been really good when he's in there. There's a lot of concerns and a lot of question marks with this Pittsburgh team. And I just needed to say, after I saw the Panthers pump them 4-1, and, I've said that window for winning is shrinking in Pittsburgh, and that is an obvious fact. They have the Buffalo Sabres right on their heels. The Ottawa Senators now at 68 points. Florida at 68 points. And the Washington Capitals still lurking at 68 points. And even at 65 in the Detroit Red Wings, in my opinion, Detroit is just as good as the Pittsburgh Penguins this year. No, they don't have a Sidney Crosby. No, they do not have Evgeny Malkin on a good day for sure. But they have a very good team. Ville Husso could steal a couple of games. All I wanted to say is that was one of my other takeaways. You might want to start to fade some of these Pittsburgh fantasy assets. If this team can't get it done over the next even week or so, it could really sink them into pretender category over contender. And very quickly, before I get to the waiver wire targets and big time bets, this Ottawa Senators team is buying in. And if you were to listen to some of their comments from guys like Brady Tkachuk and some of the key members of this team, the confidence coming out of this Ottawa Senators group right now, it almost you would think that they are already in a playoff spot or maybe in a top position in their division and not fighting for a wild card spot, how confident they are. But maybe that just means they're buying in and they think something special is happening in Ottawa, and 5 straight wins backs that up. Jacob Chychrun looked very, very comfortable in his first game. He had all the special stuff with the grandpa. Tim Hortons going. He had the apple fritter going in the stands when Chychrun scores his first as an Ottawa Senator. If you haven't seen it, please go out there and check it out. We're not going to break it down, but some of those special moments in hockey and in sports, you take a pause and you appreciate them, and that was one of them. And this Ottawa Senators team just has that special vibe going. And yeah, the 5 straight wins is the proof in the pudding. And they have an elite top 6 group. And I think really now they're going to start to roll. And I'm going to talk about them in a second with big time bets coming up around the corner. But that was the other takeaway. And lastly, Minnesota Wild, this is the best team in the National Hockey League, not named the Boston Bruins over the last couple of weeks. And an 8-1-1 record would prove as such. Getting wins now at regularity. Philip Gustafsson with the shutout over the weekend. They're playing stingy defense and they're getting some timely goal scoring. They bring in John Klingberg. They make some depth moves at the deadline. Klingberg picks up a point or two over the weekend as well, looking solid already in his his debut with the Wild. And you can't ignore that 8-1-1 record over their last 10 and ascending quickly now in that Central Division. I know Steele is a big-time Minnesota fan. They're only 3 points back of first place. I don't think you can overlook a team that's also been perennially very difficult to play at home. 21-10-2 this season in their own barn. If they can hold down home ice advantage, it's going to be huge for this Minnesota Wild team, one that will be pesky to deal with in the first round of the playoffs. Now, I alluded to at the top of the episode that the fantasy hockey playoffs are around the corner. I have 6 fantasy targets on the waiver wire this week at varying levels of ownership. And why don't I start with my 2 goalie targets? The first one is Joonas Korpisalo. I mentioned it during the week after he was moved from the Columbus Blue Jackets to the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings are right there in the mix for that Pacific Division. They might even win it. Who knows? They have enough talent up front, and now they bring in a nice move with Korpisalo and a blue liner from the Columbus Blue Jackets that balances them out very, very nicely. Korpisalo only owned at 7% in ESPN leagues. The Kings have 3 games this week. Yes, it is the Avs, Predators, and Islanders. Still, if you need a fill-in, Joonas Korpisalo, 12, 11, and 3 this season. 3.13 goals against isn't the greatest, but the save percentage is solid at 912. He picks up the win in his LA Kings debut, stopping 24 of 26 pucks. And this is just a team that, with this addition at the deadline, we know the quick move rattled a few feathers. They have an opportunity in that wide open West. And I love looking at Korpisalo this week and over the next couple of weeks if you need some help. Now, if you need some help in the cage as well, 40% owned in ESPN leagues. He might not be out there for as many of the listeners out there, but Thatcher Demko looked very good against the Toronto Maple Leafs. 5-11 and 2 this season. He's obviously been out with injury. He missed a very large portion of the season. He's looked pretty good in his, 3 starts since he's been back. 2-1, a win against Dallas, a good team, a tough loss against the Minnesota Wild, and a great win against a pretty good Toronto team. He's looked good. The Vancouver Canucks would have been maybe one of my other takeaways and one of my bets. They didn't make either, but Rick Tocchet is starting to have his effect known in Vancouver. The Canucks are playing more Rick Tocchet brand, a lot tougher, a lot more physical, and they're seeing the results in the wins. And, I think they're 4-3 in the last 7 games, playing a lot better. And, that was one of those things that when I saw Thatcher Demko put up those performances, he's owned at 40%. Yeah, okay, the Vancouver Canucks are going to still have their struggles. 3 games this week for the Canucks: Predators, Ducks, and Senators. Pretty good week. I would say Demko is my favorite goaltending option, under 50%. Good week upcoming for the Vancouver Canucks in terms of the schedule. Go ahead and take a look at Demko. Now, I said I had 2 D-men and 2 forwards to get to. I'm going to break that down quick before we get to bets. Rasmus Sandin has 3 assists on Saturday. The Washington Capitals erupt for 8 goals against the San Jose Sharks. Yes, it's the San Jose Sharks, but Rasmus Sandin has now got a really good chance to just eat a ton of minutes. With this Washington group, he was maybe a little bit, not maybe, quite down the depth chart in Toronto with so many veterans ahead of him. 21 minutes with his debut for the Sharks, 3 hits, a blocked shot. He has a power play point and 3 assists and +1. You can't help but love the opportunity that Rasmus Sandin is going to get, that number of time on ice, well over 20 minutes. I think Rasmus Sandin has that little shot of confidence. The Washington Capitals have 3 games this week. Take a look at Rasmus Sandin. He will be out there if you need an offensive fill-in in your blue line core. Speaking of blue line core, I said on Friday, with the absence of Tyson Barrie, say what you will about the moves or the lack of moves that the Edmonton Oilers have made at the deadline or what you think they're going to do, they are giving this young D-man his opportunity. They have obviously bought in an Evan Bouchard, 3 assists on Saturday against the Winnipeg Jets. 24 minutes of ice time. This is now the 3rd straight game. He was hovering around that 16, 15, 17 minute of ice time mark. How about 19, and 24 since Tyson Barrie was moved out? There. Evan Bouchard was a guy that I had my eye on all year. I explained it on Friday's episode. If you need to check out the former episodes, hit the channel, like, subscribe, make sure you do all of that. I said the reviews help here to put together, people. Very quickly before I get to the bets, Evan Bouchard, definitely worth a look. He's up to 63% owned. 3 games for the Devils as well this week: Sabres, Bruins, and Leafs. Tough East Coast swing, but I think when the Oilers score on the power play, Evan Bouchard is now going to be involved. Whew! It's been a fire episode, back to front already, people. I'm a little bit out of breath. I hope you've been enjoying the takes. Hope you've been enjoying the breakdowns. And I got to just hit you with our next sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And if you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't need all those fat and calorie counts, you got to try a Built Bar. And Built Bars, what makes them so good? They are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they are bringing those incredible flavors, new ones all the time, switching it up, but bringing the deliciousness all the time. Churro, peanut butter, brownie, coconut, almond, and we're not sure how Built does it, but they always bring the flavors, tasting like a candy bar, but maintaining those amazing macros. What's even better, they're healthy, 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar, whopping 17 grams of protein. And as much as you can still go to built.com and order these bad boys online, you can head down in person to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk down to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or even coconut puff. Or if you're near a Sam's Club, they got the 13-bar box with the hit flavors, brownie, batter, and churro. You can thank us later. Make sure you're checking out Built or Built.com for all the latest and greatest flavors from our friends at Built. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. The Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast is a part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. Thank you for riding with us every single day. And my 2 forward waiver wire targets to finish up this waiver wire week. Week 21 in the NHL for fantasy hockey. Anders Lee, big weekend, 2 goals on Saturday and a big win for the Islanders. He has also been a shots on goal beast, putting up 6 shots over his last couple of games each. I believe it's up quick. 6 shots in his last 2 games, 2 goals against the Detroit Red Wings. He's up to 24 goals on the season, and I just think he's a very player, Anders Lee. And why I wanted to get a piece of him is because of what I've seen from the New York Islanders of late. They are playing a lot better hockey, and I think they will be a wild card playoff team. You know my boy Sorokin. I say Sorokin. I know I butcher this name. Sorokin. He has been legit as well. And I think this is just a team. I know they dealt with that injury to Barzal, and that hurts. But they have the right mix top to bottom and a stingy defensive group to maybe even make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. And lastly, Tom Wilson, owned at 26%, 3 games for the Capitals. He's been filling out categories over the last couple of games. He has 5 points, 3 goals, 2 assists over his last 5, and 17 penalty minutes. He's got like 16 hits. He gets the block shots. He gets the PIMs. He's scoring right now. The time on ice is creeping up and up. He's starting to really produce, settling back in after that knee injury, up to 10 points in 15 games. The fact that he is still out there that much, and this guy brings that much value across the categories, he is a shoo-in. He was one of my favorite waiver wire ads this week. You got to be taking a look at him. And like I said, 3 games for the Washington Capitals, 6 games on the Monday NHL betting board. Let's get right to that, people, because I know I want to feed you some winners. The Winnipeg Jets put up a 7 spot against the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday. And yeah, I know it was Jack Campbell, but they're back at home now after a big bounce back win after a tough loss on Friday. And I really do like this spot for the Winnipeg Jets. Also, the San Jose Sharks have looked awful losing. They are 0-5. How many losses do they have here? There are 5 straight losses for the San Jose Sharks. They have allowed 14 goals over their last 2 games, and they've also been losing to bad teams, including the Chicago Blackhawks and Montreal Canadiens and the St. Louis Blues out of 3 of their last 4. That just tells me this team is really not performing, and it's showing with all of these crooked number losses. Winnipeg back at home, feeling confident. Money line is no value. I love them to just absolutely slap the San Jose Sharks. -1.5. Give me on the puck line the Winnipeg Jets. Yeah, the head-to-head, it's a little bit sketchy. It's making me a bit nervous. Very even. Winnipeg is 5-3-2 in their last 10 against the Sharks. These teams, I don't think they haven't played since November of 2021, when the Winnipeg Jets put a beat down on them to the tune of 4-1. If you want any of that to hold value, I don't think it does. This just feels like a good spot for the Winnipeg Jets. I'm taking them on the puck line. I don't usually make a lot of puck line bets, but this is worth it at +115. I'm liking that spot for the Jets at home against a San Jose Sharks team that is just struggling at all ends of the ice. Now, I like a little player prop action. You know, I usually like mixing in some different angles for my bets. Ons Kopitar is one of my favorite NHLers that I've watched over the course of my career, watching and covering the NHL as closely as I have. The man is 35. He has 1,125 points in 1,274 career games. He has 2 cups, 2 Selkies, a Lady Bing. He has a Messier Award. He is a absolute stud, and he's having another great year. 25 goals, 33 assists for 58 points in 64 games, 3 game-winning goals. He is still logging over 20 minutes per night in ice time. He had 4 goals against the Winnipeg Jets this past week. 4 goals. 4-goal games happen very rarely in the NHL, and if we look them up, not many come from 35-year-old players or older. He's still got the magic in his stick. He scored again against the Montreal Canadiens the next night, and I just had to write this down because he's on a nice heater. 13 goals, 8 assists and 21 points, 2 game-winning goals over his last 15 games. Give me the Kopitar anytime point as my second pick of the night. The LA Kings are at home against the Washington Capitals. The Capitals are sellers at this deadline. And yeah, they laid the beat down on the Sharks, but the Sharks are that bad. I think this is a great spot for the Kings at home and a great spot for Hans Kopitar to rack up. I'm going to say 2 points. I'm going to say goal and an assist for Copes tonight. And my last pick, my lock of the night. I talked about the Ottawa Senators a few times over the course of today's episode, and they really have felt like maybe one of those teams of destiny going on a special run headed into the playoffs. It pains me to say that as a Ontarian native and big fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but it's true. And they got their guy in Jacob Chychrun, and they have a balanced attack. And if Cam Talbot can only just be serviceable, I think this team is really going to make some noise. And yeah, they have 1 win in their last 10 games against the Chicago Blackhawks. I get that, but they're 5-0 in their last 5. They're 5-2 in their last 7 games on the road. And I'm going to throw this really bad trend against Chicago out the window, and I'm going to hammer the Ottawa Senators again tonight. Puck line, minus 118 on the road. They're feeling it. They're confident. DeBrincat maybe comes out in a big-time game back in Chicago. I don't know if this is his first one back. Something tells me it might be. Even if it's not, loving this angle for the Ottawa Senators. My lock of the night, Sens puck line minus 118. And to recap very quickly for everybody on Monday's 6-game betting board, I got the Jets on the puck line to dust away the Sharks, Kopitar anytime point, and Senators puck line on the road, against the Blackhawks, minus 118 for my lock of the night. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and making us your first listen. Make your second listen game to game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result on Locked On Game to Game. It covers every game across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Good luck with all your bets out there. Thank you for tuning into Monday's episode with your boy Big Flip Livingstone. I hope it's helped a little bit with your fantasy and betting game. I'll check you out tomorrow on Tuesday's episode. Good luck with all your bets out there, everybody.